topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, New Jersey. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where we, for the last 16 years, bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. New Jersey is such an important market to us. We have some of the finest experts, and we have received your letters, your emails, asking us, why don't we have a personal injury attorney on? And it wasn't that we didn't want one. We have so much space, and we have not had anything available for the last several years until recently. And we looked at your letters to see what kind of show you wanted. Personal injury, auto accident injury, slip and falls, wrongful death, nursing home abuse, even dog bites was the number one topic. So then we had to go out and find one of the top personal injury attorneys. That's not easy because there's some big firms out there, but big doesn't mean better. And we had so many calls on this, but the assistant, Danielle, who we spoke to, it just clicked what their law firm was about and what they wanted to do. And I had my fingers crossed. These are the people we want. Well, we did our first show in New York yesterday with the Licatasi Law Group. And it was probably one of our finest shows. And you're going to see why today, because this is our first show for New Jersey. Let me welcome you, attorney Michael Licatasi. Good morning, Michael.
I appreciate that wonderful introduction. And humbly, I could say that yesterday's show was great. It was our first show together. And I just look forward to spreading more positive news to people, informing the public, letting them know what their rights are, and helping them through your network. So I'm just here to help.
So here. Emails from listeners who said the show wasn't long enough. Now, Michael, you've been doing this long enough. You've probably done commercials. You know that less is better and keep their attention. But to have people to tell you the show wasn't long enough, that's amazing in my business. So I want to congratulate you on that.
What's interesting is, Danielle said, Mike, you have to do this. It sounds like the perfect opportunity for you to give back. And, with the busy schedule where we're litigating cases, we're on trial, it's very hard to take the time away to give back. And it's always something that I want to do and provide, this information to people. And I left yesterday energetic and rejuvenated to take that time away. So I appreciate you reaching out to us and finding us to do this.
It's so wonderful. So first of all, tell people about your firm.
Sure. So we're a New York-based firm for the past 40 years. We expanded into Jersey because our client base was begging us to do that. And we have 5 New Jersey attorneys that are admitted in New Jersey. And we have 5 or 10 attorneys that are now admitted in New York. So they're admitted in New York and New Jersey. 5 of them are admitted in Jersey. All 10 are admitted in New York, if I could say that a little bit more clear. So we help personal injury victims throughout any type of personal injury case, whether it's in New York or New Jersey. It could be anything from a very complex medical malpractice case all the way to a simple motor vehicle or trip and fall case. Anything under the sun when it comes to personal injury is something that we help with. And if there's a better expert on that particular case, we have co-counseled with firms across the country. I mentioned an infectious disease case yesterday, which was a very complex case that, we settled in the 7 figures against a grocer that everybody knows, a supermarket that everyone knows. We actually had co-counsel in Minnesota on that case, and we wanted to find the best expert in the infectious disease cases against this particular supermarket that everyone knows and typically loves. And I think that's important too. So, that's what we do. We find the best expert, which is typically what you guys try to find in those particular areas, and we litigate cases. If we can settle them, great. If not, we have 10 trial attorneys that are ready to take it to trial.
So, Michael, is there a big difference in the law between New York and New Jersey when it comes to personal injury?
There actually is. One of the biggest differences in New York and New Jersey is the comparative fault that we have here in New York versus the contributory negligence in New Jersey. So in New York, even if you're 90% at fault for an accident, you can still pursue a case. And that's why I always tell clients to give us a call, schedule that free consultation before you do anything, before you speak to the insurance companies. In New Jersey, if you're more than 50% at fault for an accident, you actually can't proceed with the case. However, I give that same recommendation to speak to us because there may be a way to frame a case in a light most favorable to you to make sure that you are less than 50% at fault. That's the biggest difference that there is in New York and New Jersey. I prefer the New York laws that are comparative negligence, that, if my client was making a U-turn, let's say, and it was a proper U-turn, and another car's driving 80 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone, my client should not have been making a U-turn there. But there may have been a circumstance where they made that U-turn 100 times before, and they knew that they had enough time if the other driver was driving 30 miles an hour. And I actually have that case on a deposition today at 1:00. And the other driver was driving like 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, drunk driver without a license, and hit my client. So in New Jersey, you may have a little bit of difficulty in that you were making a U-turn when you didn't have the right of way. But then again, you have a drunk driver without a license that was speeding. And those are difficult liability issues that we have to flesh out. In New York, we have no problem taking the case. In New Jersey, we have to think twice a little bit about the fact pattern and help our clients to frame it in the right ways to the insurance company that the other driver is actually at fault.
So what if I live in New Jersey and I know there's people who commute to New York for work and vice versa. So what happens if I live in New Jersey, I travel to New York, have an accident? Do I go by New York laws or New Jersey?
So typically we'll go by where the actual accident happened. Now that we do both, we typically will try to find the best suitable venue for that particular case. There are a lot of criteria to consider, right? So where the defendant lives is important, or where the business of the defendant is important. And typically we can choose the venue where they are. But if the accident happened in New York and the hospital's in New York where they went, and the treatment's in New York, and all the evidence is in New York, then the court's typically going to lean towards the proper venue where everything is better suited. But there are some ways around it to navigate. If it happens to be a very difficult venue in New York, maybe we'll try to strategically place it in Jersey. Or if this particular plaintiff was in such a catastrophic accident that they can't possibly travel there, we'll do whatever we can to make it as convenient as possible for them. And that's why, I find it was a natural transition for us to enter into the New Jersey market, because now we do have those scenarios very often. I have many cases like that currently where I have to position them strategically in either New York or New Jersey. So it's a very good question.
We just had somebody write us. I was one of the people who emailed you. I'm a longtime listener of your show, wanting you to get a personal injury attorney. Could you ask the attorney, have they handled any nursing home wrongful death cases due to COVID?
So on the COVID cases, there were such specific laws in place that it wasn't best suited for us to particularly handle it. We were focusing on some other matters, but we are very experienced in nursing home cases in general. There was a few firms that were kind of leading the COVID litigation, and we felt that those firms would be better suited. And, like I said, when I first joined the call, a great attorney will position their clients and put their ego aside to put them with the best possible counsel for their case. And we've done that time and time again. And we felt that if there were leaders in the COVID litigation, the clients would be better suited to proceed with those attorneys that are lobbying the politics or are very vocal and researched in that particular case.
I'm here in Florida, and I know there's going to be people listening, and I want to kind of bring this up. I had knee surgery, and so they put me in a nursing home to recoup. And at that time, nursing homes, there was a lot of COVID going around. And I got COVID from that. And I know that it was very expensive, by the way, because I was actually in ICU. I know there's people out there, there's all kinds of stories like that. Is that personal injury?
So, the cases can get very complex, right? So
yes,
you can't really hold a nursing home or a hospital responsible in certain circumstances if somebody contracts a flu virus or COVID. They should be taking certain protocols, right? But remember, the attorneys work on contingency fee basis. So we have to make sure that both of our cases are winnable. So whatever you contract, I have to causally relate to the malpractice or the negligence of the nursing home. So, for example, if a nurse came into your room, or if another patient contracted COVID and they had no idea because they contracted it right before they came into your room, and at that point they coughed or something happened, we have no way of linking that specific contraction to you when you got COVID. So yes, they need to have certain protocols in place. If they violated it a ton of times, if there's prior incidents where there were number of people that were getting COVID and you contracted it and it caused you serious permanent or future harm, then that would be a case. So I'd like to relate it back also when we talk about damages or injuries to an incident that I went through. So I had a routine appendectomy, and the surgery should be under an hour, should be 20 minutes. I was stubborn. My wife wanted to take me to the hospital. I said, I don't need to go. And at the point that I went, my appendix was already so deteriorated that it was hard for them to extract it. But the surgeon used a stapler that he knew was faulty. So when he stapled my stomach after the procedure, I was feeling additional pain. And they kept saying to me that you should be walking at this point. This was 24 to 48 hours, and I still couldn't walk after routine appendectomy. And the nurse was pushing me so hard that I woke up and my whole body turned blue from head to toe. And I lost several pints of blood, and I had such severe internal bleeding that they were rushing me to the OR to perform an additional surgery. And my family had a helicopter waiting for me to send me to a different hospital that could provide better trauma care for me. So at that point, I didn't know if I was living or dying. I knew that there was malpractice, and I knew that the surgeon definitely, deviated from the medical standard. It's common sense, even if you're a doctor or not to use a stapler that's caused, this particular issue in the past. But I didn't pursue a case. And listeners and clients think it's crazy, but at the end of the day, I recovered from that. It took me about a year. I had internal bleeding. I was in a lot of pain. I had my wife at the time had to stop what she was doing completely and take care of me. I was wheelchair bound. But thank God I was able to recover from it. I don't have future injuries as a result of it. So one thing to consider in the calls that we get in, and the hardest part about what we do, is rejecting cases or telling that it may not be worth it to pursue because it's not a quick dollar sign. It's not a quick, compensation, where you're going to receive something in within 90 days, especially on a medical malpractice or a nursing home case. To prove those cases, we have to do depositions of the nurses, of the doctors, of the nursing home, of the plaintiff, the client, maybe family members. And then you have to go through extensive litigation and independent medical exams. So to go through all of that, if you don't have a permanent injury, typically is not worth it. So what I'm trying to say too is you have to causally connect it. You have to find the liability in the case, and you have to find the damages in the case. So the liability was clear in my case, but the damages weren't that significant for my firm to take away from what we're doing to then proceed. Maybe another firm may take it because there's easy, clear liability, but we typically have a value threshold, especially on medical malpractice cases, because they take so long, they're so complex, and they're so labor intensive that we have to set that value and not veer from it. And that allows us to stay laser focused on the cases that we handle and the values that we take.
Michael, I want you to be very humble now, because this is probably one of the most important questions I'll ask you. What is the difference in your firm and other firms out there?
So I think there are more and more firms that are having a similar mindset that we do, where it's very hard to get to a level that you're helping more people, but maintain that same level of quality. And I used that reference kind of yesterday there.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I used the reference yesterday where, you hire a contractor and they're not on site, and you hire a contractor and they're not reputable or trustworthy, likely because they're taking on so many jobs and they're pulled in so many directions. You need a firm that has attention to detail, that's treating you as an individual person, that listens and tailors their litigation to your case. A lot of times, law firms are still businesses, and the attorneys may be looking at the cases as numbers and not individual clients. And that's the brutal truth and reality of it. And for us, every case is different. Every liability is different. And every person individually has been impacted and changed in their life. So a lot of what we do is arbitrations. So we will try to settle a case before we file a lawsuit. We're very, very litigation heavy. Then we'll try a mediation potentially, but we'll also do something called a binding arbitration. The reason why we like that is because we can set our client up most favorably. Instead of going to trial and spending significant litigation expenses, we'll go to a binding arbitration. It'll be a 30-minute testimony from our client. It's more informal, streamlined, it's cheaper. It'll cost you anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 to hire an arbitrator and go to this particular forum. And you don't need to pay an accident reconstructionist $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. You don't have to pay a medical expert $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, even $30,000 plus to go to this arbitration. But to get back to why I brought up the arbitration, I like it the most because our clients can tell their story. And our clients can sit and explain why their life is impacted different than other people's. And most law firms are just so quick to settle the case when we take a pause and we take a step back and say, wait, Miss Jones here, I had a client that was an orchestrator and a conductor and a pianist, and she fell and fractured her wrist and had metal and hardware inputted into her wrist, and is never able to conduct again. And the adjusters and the attorney said, well, she is able to conduct, she's still working. And I said, she's able to conduct, but not at the same level that she was able to before. And they couldn't understand the difference. And the most important part about her testimony was she explained it in common terms to the arbitrator and the judge and the adjuster and the defense attorney, that said, it's like I'm stuttering while I'm conducting. And I did this for 40 years. It's my passion. It's my life. It's instilled in me. And I can't thoroughly and fluidly conduct. So imagine if I was speaking right now and I was stuttering. That's how she was orchestrating to a orchestra, and they had to be in harmony. And she worked in, some of the most high level orchestrators in New York and throughout the country. She wasn't able to do that anymore. And I think that's, one of the biggest differences between our firms is we listen and we put that case and structure it properly so that our client's story can be heard.
Well, I told Danielle in the beginning, the show is going to go by so fast. We have people who are kind of on the edge of their seats wanting more. A lot of people asking about auto accidents, which I promise you for both New York and New Jersey, we will do next month. Michael, how do people reach your office?
So the best way to reach us, you can call us at 516-227-2662, 516-227-2662. That's our main line, and your call will be directed to the appropriate person, whether it's the attorney, the paralegal, our intake department. Our receptionist will put you with the best person to help you. You can also send a text message to my assistant's cell phone at 516-725-2552, 516-725-2552. And if you ever want to schedule a free consultation, we'd be happy to help you and direct you in the right way, as long as it's legally compliant and we're able to do so. I even recommended yesterday, or offered, to send a list of attorneys that we know that can handle your prospective case if it's something that we don't handle in-house. So we want to be a resource to the community. We want at this point to give back. So we appreciate the opportunity to do that.
We're so glad. Michael, we'll see you next month. Have a wonderful Easter. Stay well. And like I said, we'll see you next month for both our New York and our New Jersey show. Thanks, Michael.
Happy Easter. Thank you.
That's attorney Michael Licatasi. That's going to be it for us today. We'll be back in with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.